Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hosts Melanie Johnson and Jenn Foster are the owners of Elite Online Publishing. They're both Wall Street Journal, USA Today best-selling authors. We're really glad you're here because this podcast was designed for you. Meet industry experts that share their secrets and strategies. Get successful results for your business in money, relationships, health, and your life. Each episode is going to inspire you to take action towards reaching your greatness.
Hey everyone, Jenn Foster here with Elite Expert Insider. We are so excited to have our guest on today. Now, you might be an introvert, you might be an extrovert, you might not know what those are, but today we have an expert here, Jennifer Kahnweiler, and she is a PhD. She's written multiple books, and she is a global speaker, and she is called the Champion of Introverts. So we're really excited. She just published another book, Creating Introvert Friendly Workplaces. And so we're going to be talking about that. And a lot of her books have been translated into lots of languages. So we might get into some of that too, on how you can have your book, if you're an author, in different languages. So thanks, Jennifer, for coming.
Oh, Jenn, I'm so happy to talk to another Jenn too. It's always fun.
Yes.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of dive into this. You're the introvert expert. So how do you define an introvert?
Well, it takes a lot of permutations these days. So I'm glad you asked the question so we can sort of just clarify where it is now. The first term came up in the early 1900s with Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist. And he talked about introversion, and I still subscribe to this, as being where we get our energy from. And introverts get it from within. They're in their heads. Now, extroverts also are thinkers and certainly process, but they are stimulated by the people and world outside them. Both of them like people. That's the misnomer. People think, oh, introverts they hate people. That's not true at all. But introverts can only take a certain amount of that external stimulation. Their batteries drain quicker than with an extrovert. And now we have actually research around the brain that validates that. So dopamine is something that extroverts love to get a lot of, and introverts can only take so much. So there's actually biochemical differences between introverts and extroverts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I think with COVID and the pandemic and everything, I think some people who thought they were extroverts have realized, well, maybe I'm an introvert because I kind of like staying home now.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting, Jenn, because we have both sides within us. You're not either or, it is a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really interesting that introverts, of course, everybody said, oh, they love being home all the time. But, we're also hearing from introverts, no, it's not all or nothing. I miss people too. I really want to see my team. I miss my family. I like people connection. But the cool thing is I've been pushing for extroverts to slow down and get into their quiet time where creative ideas come and inspiration happens, where they can get centered. And extroverts were forced to do that, right, in the pandemic. Yeah. And as you're saying, many of them said, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And
right.
And I think, in normal day life, you get busy and be doing all these things and having, going out every night or, with different parties or different events. And so I think that the pandemic and COVID kind of helped us stop for a minute and take that moment to take a second. Because a lot of times, you need that vacation, but you don't take it. So, right.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. And I've been talking with a lot of people in business who have said that this was like other times of crisis. It allowed us to sort of step back, and because out of necessity, we had to, I'm not going to use that word again, but I guess I will, pivot,
yes.
And so taking that quiet time, again, that's where introverts get their energy from, but they also get their creative ideas. So when extroverts slow down, then they have the gift of that as well. So we had to rethink a lot of things. We had to be creative. In my field of speaking, everything just came to a screeching halt on March 10th or whatever. I was actually, my bag was packed. And I was on the way to the airport and decided to cancel the trip I was going to go be speaking at. And I think it's changed for everybody. So mm-hmm. what that meant was that we had to kind of shift everything we did. And introverts were at an advantage in that they are used to, and they're okay embracing silence and being alone.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about pivot, we could still do our speaking engagements, but it had to do it online, or we had to do it in a virtual summit or some other type of event instead of just going, traveling around the world to speak.
Right, exactly. And I was fortunate. I was just talking with somebody before this call that I had actually been using virtual technology for a long time, teaching online classes as one of my areas of expertise. And so what I knew is that many of the classes I was teaching were geared towards introverts, or we were discussing things that were topics that were relevant to them. And what I learned, I was not too worried, is that there was high engagement in those settings. So particularly because they had the chat, and introverts express themselves a lot through writing rather than speaking. They write out their thoughts and they'll talk them out. But the virtual platform really allowed even more engagement from a whole cross section of people in the companies I'm working in. So I wasn't worried, because clients always say to me, well, you're going to have introverts in this session, or is anybody going to speak? And I'll say, don't worry. People are going to take a minute, and then that chat's going to go crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, everyone was so excited. Zoom, 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 you got to Zoom onto, using the video platform and the video conferencing. And we've been doing this podcast for almost 6 years now. And we're like, oh yeah, we've been using Zoom for a very long time and video conferencing. And a lot of our clients are all over the world. So and some are introverts, some are extroverts. So I read that your husband is an introvert, but you are actually an extrovert. So tell us a little bit about that.
You are so right about that. And we've been 40 something for over 46 years now. It's hard to believe that we're still together. And I would say the knowledge of that, when I first met my husband, it was, I was fortunate enough to have taken very shortly after that a Myers-Briggs, which is the assessment, which wasn't very popular back then, but I kind of saw the light and was like, oh my God, that's the reason after we go to social events, like my husband, Bill, will go off for hours by himself. I was like, is it me? But I had the awareness, like a lot of us do when we take these personality assessments, like nothing's wrong with him, but he is an introvert, I learned. And so that kind of put that in my head. And as I was doing work in coaching and in training and speaking, I always had that lens to look through in working with my clients, and would clarify to them what an introvert was. And we would talk more about it. And it gave them a lot of freedom to start to step into their own power, of who they were. So the lessons we get at home, I think, do transfer to the workplace. In fact, many of my people that come to my speeches, or my clients, my coaching clients, will say that even if they're very extroverted, let's say, they'll say, I have an interest in this topic because I have someone in my family that I can't quite connect with. So I want to learn more about what the best way to communicate with my introverted folks.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. How do we welcome introverts into our workplace and kind of helping that friendly environment?
Right. Well, first of all, we have to be able to take the elephant out of the room and actually say the word introvert. There's nothing wrong with it. So we need to get to know people one-on-one and find out what their preferences are. When you know that, then you don't, particularly back in the office, for instance, you don't catch them unawares and just keep stopping by their work area and start breaking out into conversation. Maybe you give them a heads up, so it kind of changes your behavior. You think about your team, and you're looking at different ways of in getting the best out of people. So what does that mean? So at a meeting, you maybe incorporate a technique like brain writing. Have you heard of that, Jen, versus brainstorming?
Right. Yeah. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So you put a question, let's say, on the table, and you say, for right now, I'm going to just ask everybody to write down their thoughts on this and not say anything for a few minutes. Right. And you can either circulate the paper and just continue the silence, and you get a lot of very rich data, or you can have people then speak. And so introverts appreciate the pause. It's like
taking that time, slowing down for a second.
So it's those techniques and learning what introverts prefer, rather than always putting it through our own lens as extroverts. Oh, we just need to talk this out to get ideas. No, folks need to think about it, give an agenda, all these things to help introverts prepare, because that's also a sweet spot. To once they're prepared, even if you're going to have a meeting and you say, well, listen, I'm going to ask you, Jen, to give your update on this and say what you see the challenges are, you have a chance to think about it, and you're going to give much better information because you've had a chance just to review it in your head. Rather than just be called on last minute, and
off the cuff, like, tell me this, like have them be prepared and kind of let people know. So having agendas then and having all of those things ready.
Yeah, which we all know we need to do that, but everybody's rushing around, like you say. Another thing that people need to consider, and this is very relevant right now with folks talking about a hiring shortage, that we really need to consider introversion in the mix. Are we dismissing potential candidates because maybe they're not the kind of person we, quote, would like to have a beer with? Somebody who isn't maybe that gregarious, but what might that have to do, if anything, with the job that they're actually being hired for? So I think we need to kind of separate those things, be real clear about what we're looking for, and not just mix up personality, just thinking they don't fit, quote unquote. And so I think those are a couple of things that we can do as leaders. There's a lot more in the Creating Introvert Friendly book, a whole list by 7 areas that we took a look at, Jen. I went out to Silicon Valley before COVID and looked at a number of progressive companies around the country and in the world, actually, and looked for like what I call pockets of introvert inclusion. So we found things that bosses were doing, that teammates were doing, to try to stop and say, okay, this is another aspect of diversity and inclusion, right, that we need to consider is personality. Whether somebody's an introvert or extrovert, let's not gloss over that. And I share a number of those in the book. So it's pretty exciting. I keep collecting them now too.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and let's talk a little bit about maybe assessing our business to say, can we have employees that are remote, right? Can we hire that person who is an introvert, but to be on a conference call or to be working remotely?
Right. This is the big $64,000 question. I guess they should raise the fee of that now. But every client or prospect I'm talking with now, this is the top of mind issue.
Yes.
What are we going to do now going back? And how do we suit our workplace? How do we have the 3 areas that I found when I was researching what were that we look at in an office environment is collaboration, socialization, and focus. And many of the clients that I'm talking to now are saying and individuals, we are missing that true collaboration and socialization. Is you can do it on Zoom, but you're just missing that sort of, the thing that you can't even put your finger on. When you have those extemporaneous conversations, when you're walking by somebody's area and you hear what they're working on, it gives you context to yours, or you run into each other right at the coffee place and you just have a conversation that helps your project. That doesn't happen virtually. So a lot of the clients are talking about hybrid situations. For introverts, we did a study just still a few months ago. We had a huge response of like 200 just introverts. And 90% of them said they wanted to continue with remote work. Now, they, not necessarily indicating how many days a week. For some jobs, it's possible that you can do that. I think we've learned many managers who were very much against remote work are now realizing or have realized that there's a lot that can get done. People can be very productive. So I think we need to take so many of those factors in mind. People love not having the commute, Jen. That was
the time management factor. Yeah. I mean, not paying for, specific, like a lot of things can get done in a shorter amount of time now. And the commute and all of the busy work that happens in an office that doesn't need to happen when you're just
you're
focused.
Right. You're totally right. I had a client say to me the other day, when I was done at 3:00, I had to sit there. Right? Rather than go home and get stuff. Now she can do a load of laundry and not have to do that. But, as I say, the challenges are the lack of connection for new employees coming on, getting a sense of the culture and what it's really like, onboarding, that kind of thing. So I think we need to look at all of those factors as well and deciding whether or not it works, and to really check in with introverts and extroverts. It's not just the extroverts are ready to go back a lot.
Yes. Well, and there's so many tools now. Even if you do a hybrid type situation for your company, there's so many tools now to bring people together, whether it's in a breakout room on, having a group conference call, or the new social media platforms like Clubhouse, for instance. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
I've checked it out.
So it's all audio. So,
audio,
what do you think introverts think about Clubhouse?
About Clubhouse? I think there are quite a few on there. I've been checking out the introvert rooms. Yeah. I think they are. I don't know if they've broken it down by that yet, though. I don't think that's really necessarily corporate, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but a corporation could create their own private group and have people invited there to have that collaboration and speaking without having to worry about video or having to worry about, people in the conference room.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just saying one of the issues that comes up and has really surfaced during virtual work for introverts has been visibility. That's a question we get a lot. Like, how do I show people really what I'm doing? I'm not somebody to brag about myself. This is part of my job. I'm not even having a chance to just kind of see people informally. And so it was interesting. One of the things that we interview senior leaders a lot on these fireside chats. And, one thing I picked up is that people focus on individuals who are introverted, who are successful, do build relationships. They build one-on-one relationships. So when people know you, then they can promote you. They can share your accolades with others. I mean, you can do some of that, and you need to let people know what you're up to and what results you're getting, but it's not natural or comfortable for introverts. So we say, don't push yourself so far out of your comfort zone that it's going to be excruciating. Make it just enough so we challenge ourselves, but let's build up our bastion of allies who can speak up for us in the workplace. And I think that's a strategy that I would recommend to people as a way to really continue to achieve visibility.
I love that. Well, tell people where they can find your book, the book that
everywhere. Everywhere. Anywhere you like to buy your books, including Amazon, of course, and independent bookstores as well. So if you go to my website, you can also, jenniferkahnweiler.com. We actually have provided some pretty meaty excerpts of each book that you can download a PDF of. And I also encourage people, we have a quiz for each of the topics, like introverted leadership, quiet influence, genius of opposites, which talks about how do you get along with your opposite, introvert or extrovert. And it works for husbands and wives too, Jenn, when you're asking. You can download one of those quizzes. They're very short and get a sense of where you are. So there's a lot. I would say the site is very robust.
Okay, perfect. So people can visit JenniferKahnweiler.com for more information there. And tell us a little bit before we go about how did you get your books in 17 or now 18 different languages?
Great question. I have a great publisher, and one of the Barrett Kohler, and one of the things that they do is that they really they have a focus on selling subsidiary rights. But as an author too, I supported that. And I'm sure you advise your authors to work very closely with who's ever publishing their book. You're a team, right? So one of my goals when I was writing my first book was to travel more internationally. I had done quite a bit here. And so what I would do is let my publisher know when I was headed somewhere. And then we would market the book over there. I would speak about it. One place was in Germany where they set up like these salons for me. We'd have conversations. And then the book, the publishers like it over there because then you're promoting, and then they have the author, coming. So everybody's doing a book signing. So I think in being involved in the promotion is really good. But that's how we do it. Now you guys do it for you advise people about how they can get their books sold in different languages too, right?
Yes, definitely. And so what would your advice be to an introvert who maybe doesn't want to travel or do those book signings? What would you recommend them?
You mean for the promotion?
Yes.
There's a lot of ways to do promotion very strategically. Again, building the relationship, but also having a really good social media plan. And learning to do a little bit of video, perhaps. Maybe that would be a really anathema to you, but not really. If you can speak to the camera and learn some of the techniques there, you can do a tremendous amount. I was just on a LinkedIn Live with Jessica Chen. Mm-hmm. Many people who interview me who have these sessions are introverts, and we do videos and we have a very nice conversation the way you and I, Jen, are today. So find ways through these different channels that you were mentioning to get visibility and decide which ones are appropriate for you. And I would also say appropriate means where's your audience?
Yes, your niche.
Not just saying
niche or niche.
Niche. Where do they hang out? Where do they hang out? So for me now, LinkedIn is a focal point, because that's where my audience mostly is living. So I try to go there, and I still like Instagram, but I don't spend as much time at Facebook because I've made some decisions about that.
Yes, I agree. Great. Well, thanks so much for coming today, Jennifer. And everyone can go to jenniferkahnweiler.com. We'll put the link up in the video as well as in the show notes. And thank you for being a guest on Elite Expert Insider.
My pleasure, Jen. Thank you for a great interview.
Thank you. And everyone, remember to subscribe and to leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.